2/3 of Americans have gut issues. I care so much about healing America's gut.
What is sour milk?
Milk itself is a sexy word. What I want people to remember is yogurt is alive, and what you're eating is an alive, fermented product. We sold out of 1,500 yogurts in 7 days. Bigger brands are just showing you like the polished version, and what builds trust with the consumer is taking them through the ups and the downs and the real failures throughout. I get to try Chobani and tell you it tastes really bad and there's a lot of shitty things in it. A sour milk, like, I don't know if I want to stand for that. I get an email in my inbox that says, if you don't change your name in 7 days, we're going to take legal action.
Kiki Couchman, what is sour milk?
It is a high probiotic Greek yogurt that's made for your gut. So we're taking all the probiotics you'd find in a pill or a powder supplement and actually culturing it in your yogurt.
What is behind the name sour milk?
Well, obviously there's like the gut punch of like, ew, bleh, sour milk, right? Like it's almost spoiled and people have that initial reaction. But really what I want people to remember is yogurt is alive, and what you're eating is an alive, fermented product that has so many good probiotics in it. And so instead of just you're eating the random yogurt in the yogurt aisle, you're eating sour milk.
Cool. Mm-hmm. And then there is a story behind how you got to the name, right?
Yes, there is.
So, and actually when I saw this on your Instagram, I thought this is a founder's dream come true. This is like one of those stories that founders tell, like, oh, we were going for it, everything was lining up, and then we hit this snag. So what's the story behind the name sour milk?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was horrible. Like, it was one of those things where the real story is I went to Expo West. There's another company out there called Benny. They're also two girls who are in their mid-20s. And I ran into them and I said, oh my God, you're the other Benny girls. It's so nice to meet you. No response from them. 2 days later, I get an email in my inbox that says, hey, we've recently become aware of your name. And if you don't change your name in 7 days, we're going to take legal action. So yes, I saw a grimace. That's exactly how we felt. And we said, no, like, we're not going to change our name. We're going to negotiate. We think we can have a coexistence agreement. Dairy is really hard. I don't plan to move out of dairy. You're an energy drinks company. Can't we just be in two different places? They said nope. And a month later, we got a cease and desist. And Alana and I looked at each other. She's my co-founder. And we decided, okay, we could try and fight this, but that's going to be like $30,000 in legal battle. And it's just not worth it. By the time we actually potentially win, and it's not even a clear case, we might already have packaging in the world. We've already built more brand equity. Why don't we change the name now? So we decided to change the name. We had no idea what to do. It was like this pit in our stomach. We've already created a following. Yes, we're not launched, but we already had like 15,000 followers, 1,500 people on our wait list. Like, people knew who we were and people called us Benny. Like, they knew us as that. And so we decided, okay, what better thing to do than to bring this to social media? And why don't we turn this into a huge marketing campaign? And that obviously was not the intent from the get-go. We did not want to do this, but we decided, let's put a spin on this and let's galvanize our followers to really feel super bought into our story and rooting for us and wanting us to win. And hopefully, we didn't even know what the name would be on the other side, but like, we'll figure out a better name and we know people will be with us through that journey.
And so what was the process, or how did you land on
sour milk?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was like obsessive. Like, the next 3 weeks, all we could do was like eat, drink, sleep names. Like, I would look at something and be like, Frigidaire. Why is it called Frigidaire? Oh my God, why is that a good name? Why is that a bad name? Or like Hydro Flask. Okay, what is that? What makes that a good name, bad name? Vitamin water. It was like I couldn't go through the world without thinking about the name. And so we started to develop frameworks of what actually made a good name for us. Ultimately, though, it's like an emotional decision. And we were just, no pun intended, it was like a gut feeling whether we wanted to go with sour milk or not. We landed on that category because we wanted it to be both easy and simple. So we like sour milk, and that is something that people know and recognize already. We want it to be super memorable. So again, it's that like delta in being a negative word to actually being a positive brand association that creates that memorability. And then we just kind of like the sexiness of the name. Like, milk itself is a sexy word. And we were thinking about what are other plays on milk that we can do. But sour milk really like hit all those criteria.
You might be the only person that has ever said milk is a sexy word.
Milk is a sexy word. Can't you see? Like, we were thinking like, okay, what's a campaign with like milk dripping down someone's face? Like, it's a very,
Yeah. Also,
see it.
when you just said Frigidaire, I think that's the first time I've ever realized that Frigidaire means cold air. Right.
There you go. Frigid air.
Yeah, frigid
exactly.
Air. All right. So you've been building in public.
Yeah.
And you went from private equity into starting your own company.
Yes.
And a CPG food company. That seems pretty crazy, right? So what has it been like to shift your identity from someone in private equity into a founder?
It's a great question. I think it was a lot harder than I thought. I went to Stanford, and every other person calls themselves a founder at Stanford at one point or another. And they're starting some like random company and they raised like $10,000 and they're a founder, right? And so to me, that was like an uncomfortable identity to shift into, was it felt like this cliche of like founder boys that I didn't want to associate with. And that's what I knew it to be in my head. But actually going through the shift was a lot harder because I think I had spent my whole life pegging my identity to external institutions. So I was a straight A student in high school. I got into Stanford. Oh, I'm a Stanford student. That immediately gives me credibility wherever I go. Oh, I work in private equity. Oh, what fund do you work at? Oh, I work at this fund. Oh my God, that's an amazing fund. Great. Immediate credibility. And now I'm in a place where I have literally zero credibility because our product is not even a grocery store shelf, right? All I have is like the followers on my account and the number of yogurts we've sold. And I have nowhere to pin my identity as Kiki Couchman other than literally myself and the backing of this company. And by the way, we have no backers. We have no fundraisers. So we also have no institutional backing to give us credibility in any way. So that's been the hardest part, is actually just like gaining the confidence to be my own person and stand on my own 2 feet without actually having anything behind me.
So what did give you the confidence? Because it's totally different to be in a corporate job, private equity, to be on the other side. And I know what you mean about like the founder boy culture out on the West Coast. Like everybody is a founder. I don't know how it is in New York here, but so I understand the negative perception of, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. Oh, I'm a founder. You know, you're still living
entrepreneur vibe. Yes.
Serial entrepreneur. You're living in your mom's basement, and I'm an entrepreneur, right? Yeah.
Yes.
And so what did give you the confidence to go start this company from where you came from?
I don't know if it was truly confidence or if it was just conviction that now is the right time. So I don't think that there was a moment where I'm like, yes, I've got this. Like, I am the right person to do this. It was that, oh, I feel so compelled to work on this project. I care so much about healing America's gut. I care so much about doing something about that and putting something into the world. And by the way, I'm 26 and now is the time to work really hard and to grind every day. And I want that in my life right now. And I have runway in front of me where I don't need to make money. I have no one to care for but myself. And so now really felt like exactly the window of opportunity to actually jump and do that. So much more about that than actually like go Kiki, you know?
Why do you care so much about other people's guts?
Yes. Well, I studied human biology, which I think says a little bit of something about that. I grew up in agriculture area. And to me, I'm just like, the two most important things on earth are planetary health and human health. And like, that's what keeps us here. And so all the other things, yes, very important. But to me personally, those are the most important things. 2/3 of Americans have gut issues. I would say, I'd venture to say it's like far more than that. We're at the frontier of gut health research in the microbiome, and we're realizing it leads to Alzheimer's, to a lot of cancers, to a lot of chronic conditions, let alone just like general bloating and discomfort every single day in our lives. And so I care because it's both something that I personally experience, but also I see so many other people experiencing. And we're seeing a lot of like point solutions for it. We're seeing a lot of this supplement or this pill or this powder or this like goop or this spoonful you take in the morning. And ultimately, I want to meet people where they are. I don't want to force them to make another habit. Like, I don't want you to have to take another thing in the morning. Just eat your yogurt bowl that you eat every single day. 92% of Americans eat yogurt. So why don't we just meet you where you are and eat the thing you already love, and you get all the benefits of actually a healing probiotic.
And so then why is yogurt the product versus an alternative milk type product?
because we love dairy. We're big dairy girls over here, but also there's a lot of alternative products on the market. And I think there's a lot that are doing really good things. Like Coconut Cult is doing an awesome stuff with probiotics. They're sort of making you introduce a new habit as well by taking like 1 tablespoon, but that's okay. Dairy itself already has all the macros that we want in our yogurt. So a cup of milk already has 6 to 8 grams of protein. Like these things that we care about a lot that we're trying to achieve in society, like our protein goals, like our good fats, our good micronutrients, those are already existent in dairy. And so that's like the biggest reason is we care a lot about that. I think the other thing is you're seeing just a cultural trend back towards that. So this is not the reason we started a dairy yogurt company, but I think we get the benefit of people moving more towards the outer aisles, moving away from veganism, from Oatly, realizing it spikes your blood sugar levels. There's so many seed oils in it, whatever, all these alternatives. Let's go back to the real source of animal products and let's actually create something that's speaking to a younger generation and that actually does good for our bodies too.
Yeah, love that. And you're how old again?
26.
26. I wish I cared this much about my gut health and everything when I was your age. Yeah.
You can now, though.
Oh, I love it.
Get you some yogurt.
Whole Foods. Yeah, I know. And I don't eat a lot of dairy, but now I'm like convinced that maybe it can be good for me. Yeah, exactly. Totally. The way that you are documenting your journey as a founder feels very authentic. It feels like it's a very local New York native vibe and internet native. It's somehow you've been able to like create this local authentic vibe as well as like tying in the internet aspects. Can you talk a little bit about your intention or approach behind how you've been documenting everything?
Yeah. So I'll just start with the New York local vibe. We are a refrigerated cold chain product that has an 8-week shelf life. So we cannot be everywhere. Everyone asks us, when are you shipping? I'm like, when are you willing to pay for a refrigerated product to come to your door? And so because of that, we are really forced to build our local base here in New York because we actually don't have a cold chain system that's already set up nationwide, right? And so there's almost like a forcing mechanism to be hyper local, but I think that creates such this vibe of exclusivity and community-based and authenticity because we're truly like city biking around this city. Everything we're doing is very real to our story and also very necessary for the type of product that we're actually producing. So I think there's a hand in hand with the product and the content that actually does really well to actually curate that vibe. Yeah.
So what happens when you get bigger though? Like what, like, are you going to be biking around the city forever?
No, we will not be biking around the city forever. We'll be in retail and retail chains can take us. We'll have much bigger distribution across the US, but we still want to start hyper local. So again, what people probably don't know about retail is if you don't sell through your product, so if your expiration date hits and you're in a grocery store, you can get charged back. So you have to pay back for that product that they don't sell. That's really expensive and you have no way, you can forecast 20%, right, each month of what you think might be charged back. That's a lot of product. We want to make sure we can get 100% sell through when we hit the grocery store shelves. And so where can we do that? New York City. Let's conquer New York City. Let's do it really, really, really well here in New York. And then we'll expand to the Northeast. And then we'll expand to the Mid-Atlantic. And then we'll expand to California. And then we'll expand beyond. But it really takes those specific success points before we really feel confident to continue growing.
Are you doing this intentionally to market the product? Or is it really around like, this is the best way for us to build this?
I think it goes like hand in hand. I think the success of content for me, everybody asks, how do you do this? How do you build a company? How do you come up with a new reel or a new TikTok every single day? How are you doing? I just did an AMA all day today. Like, how do you do this stuff when you're also, you know, going up to your co-manufacturer, developing your recipe, talking to retailers? And it's because the content we're creating is actually just the decisions we're making and actually just the things that we're doing to build this business. And so it feels both authentic because it is, but also really easy because it's just documenting the stuff that we're doing. You have to know how to package it right, and you have to know how to make it interesting and intriguing and attractive, like a world that people want to actually be part of. But that's sort of the marketing spin. Otherwise, I think it's just essentially what we're doing. And there's the only intention is that creates a following and that creates a community and that creates an engaged audience that can then show up for us.
And so what are some of the other things that founders can do to replicate the success that you've had around content creation and documentation. You mentioned AMAs and packaging.
Yeah.
But like, are there other things that you found that surprised you about documenting?
I think when I initially went into this, our intent was, Alana and I were both, Alana is my co-founder, best friend, and we were both deciding who's going to be the person to be the face on social media. And we both made practice, short form videos, and we decided it was absolutely not her. And so it was going to have to be me. And I had never done it before, but it just was slightly easier for me than it was for her. And we thought, okay, the reason we're going to do this is because we want to pay 0 on CAC. Like, we want to have the lowest customer acquisition cost possible. So I don't want to have to pay an influencer to do this. Why don't we just skewer one of ourselves to become the influencer? So I got skewered and I'm the influencer now. And we saw that as a way to gain customers. And that was our initial intent. I think the thing that we've seen as like an unintended consequence, very positive consequence, is the founder community that's come out of it. Like, I have been connected to so many CPG founders through this. People ask me, how do you know all these people? I'm like, Instagram. Like, that's truly the answer. And also so many other companies that have helped us in our journey. So our logistics company, we need refrigerated trucking wherever we go. We can't just rent a van and bring our yogurt back down from upstate. We have to have a reefer truck. Where did that come from? That came from a girl DMing me on Instagram who is an account executive at this logistics company. Like, I didn't even know where to begin to find that. And so I began to have these conversations with people in the industry, and opportunities opened up that I would never have imagined because of social media.
How much of what you thought you knew in the beginning?
Like 0%. 0%. I'm like, even asked me like a week ago what I knew about this industry, I know like 150% more than what I knew a week ago, right? So it's just like, and that goes from marketing, from Instagram, from like the craft of creating a video, from literally like the yogurt aisle. It's like a race to the bottom and understanding what the economics look like in the yogurt aisle, or retail or distribution. Like, all of those things I've learned so much about, which also is a very fun thing. That's another reason we decided to do this, was we felt like we were both plateauing in our learning in our previous jobs, and we wanted to immerse ourselves into a world where we knew nothing, but it wasn't unknowable. Like, this is a knowable world that we can actually learn. We're gonna have to get up and ramp very quickly, but it's gonna be really fun and like very meaty also. That's
one of the main reasons I started the podcast, is to really expand my learning and my growth.
Yeah, it's cool.
Through COVID, through the work that I was doing during COVID and beyond, got really heads down, really isolated, really just like stuck in the work. Mm-hmm. And then I wasn't learning anymore either. And so as part of the podcast, it's like, I just want to go meet people who are doing really cool things that I've never even thought of or heard of, and be a part of it, be able to live through these people and then share it with everybody. So.
And you just get to ask people questions all day, which is like amazing.
I sponsored a conference, and I did like 14 podcasts in like 2.5 days. And at the end, a lot of people asked me if my voice hurt at all. I was like, no, I just had to sit and ask questions and let everyone else talk.
Cool.
It's very cool. I love the reciprocal relationship of being able to do this, and then having everyone in the room right now is really cool. So how many, like, where are you at in the shipping of your products?
Yeah, totally. We're super, super early. Last week, we just did, actually now a week and a half ago, we just did our first ever large scale production run. And so it's not like we're launched production run, now it's in retail. It's like, this was our first large scale production run, which means it's an R&D test run. So we did as much as possible to control all the variables on like a stove top, so like a small yogurt batch. But once you actually, start testing at large scale, with dairy, you're working with really high minimum order quantities. So you can't just go to a manufacturer and be like, can we just do a test run of like 100 yogurts? You have to do a minimum of 250 gallons of milk. That is so much milk. That brought us to 1,500 single serving yogurts.
Wow.
Just for our first test run. And we didn't know, was that going to be great? Was that going to be kind of fine? Like, we have no idea. We did it. It turned out great. There's some things in the process that were not quite optimized, so we're working on that. But the actual product is amazing and delicious. And so we made that last week. We put up on our website, hey guys, come and pick up orders, pre-order, pick up in different locations around the city. We sold out all 1,248 yogurts in 7 days, which is amazing. I have actually like 50 yogurts left here to sell to all of you if you guys are interested. And so now we're going to go back up again to our manufacturer. We're going to do one more test run this week because, like I said, we have some kinks in our process that we just want to iron out. We'll sell those 1,500 yogurts again in 2 weeks. And then I think we're going to lay low a bit until we actually do a real big launch. So day one really starts when we're actually in retail, and that'll come in the fall. Between now and then, we have to work on finalizing our packaging, getting our nutrition label on the packaging. That takes 10 weeks. Then you have to do your packaging minimum order quantity is 150,000 units. So we got to make sure that's iron tight, right? We were talking to retailers. That takes a long time. You need to convince them that you're worth putting in and fighting out, Chobani to get yourself into the refrigerator space. Takes a lot of money too. So we're in that process of having those conversations, which will put us out a few more months before we're really there.
So what are the big obstacles then going through all that? Obviously the minimum quantities, but how do you actually get onto the shelf?
There's two really big things you need to do. You need to win accounts, which is in retail. So I need to go to, let's say Citarella or wherever it is in New York City, and I need to get to the buyer. So sometimes you go to the store manager in person, then you get to the buyer and you give them a test of your product. And really, you need to convince them, why is your product going to bring in more people to Citarella than Siggy's or than, White Mustache, which is a very fancy yogurt here in New York City. So that's number one, is you need to win over the accounts. Number two is then, how are you going to get your yogurt into that grocery store? Some of those grocery stores let you yourself distribute the yogurt, which means bring it from your factory to the grocery store. But most people don't. And that means you need to find a distributor who's willing to take you. So then there's a middleman that's involved, and you need to find that distributor. Some grocery stores only work with some distributors. So you need to find those distributors. You need to get them to agree to take you on. And then you start getting cut. Your profits start getting cut because now there's a middleman involved. So that's really what the big two hurdles are for us over the next few months, is finding the right accounts to go after and winning those accounts, and then getting distributors and making sure we're at a price point that makes sense for everybody involved. So that way we can still stay in business and grow.
And so you're sort of going up against big dairy.
We are.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what's the strategy behind going up against big dairy?
What is the strategy? So dairy's a commodity, which most people think, but don't truly know what that means. There's a floor price set for milk every month by the government. It's truly a commodity, which means obviously every dairy product downstream of that is affected by that. And yogurt, like I just said, is a race to the bottom. So you're looking at Chobani and, you're paying $1.29 for a yogurt. Guess how much they're actually making from that yogurt by the time it goes to the distributor, to the grocery store? You're making probably 20 cents off of every yogurt that's sold. So, and for scale here, our yogurt cup costs $1.10. Literally just the packaging of the cup. So in order to be competitive, we have to be a higher price point for us to be able to stay in business, right? So we're going up against big yogurt. That's tough when it's a race to the bottom. We're saying, no, F that. We're not going to do the race to the bottom. We're going to put ourselves in a different category. Coconut Cult was able to do that. They were able to totally break that ceiling. They're charging $14 a tiny little jar, and people are buying it off the shelves. We will not be that price, but that show that there is a market and people actually are willing to pay for real probiotics, real ingredients, and things that actually work for their body. And so we're saying that's what we're going to do. We're going to provide you better macros, real whole milk, organic milk, and real probiotics that are actually going to help you every day. And so we're going to price it higher and take a totally different strategy from what everyone else is doing.
So I hear you saying why yours is better, and you're saying real whole milk.
Yes.
Are you saying that Chobani and other yogurt, they don't use real whole milk?
What they do use is they use a lot of additives to cut a lot of the milk. There's also a lot of milk powders and concentrates that are put back in to fortify the protein levels and also to create the illusion of thickness, but actually without straining it. So you'll get other gums and powders and those types of things.
The sawdust,
all of it.
The xanthan gums.
Yeah, you get a cornstarch. You'll see a lot of cornstarch.
Yeah, the classic stuff. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what are the big risks for you coming up when you do all this, right? And
everything.
Yeah.
I mean, the difference between building a SaaS company and building a literal product is the past 2 weeks I have not slept well because I have product sitting in a warehouse that could blow up. It could go to waste. It could get eaten by rats. It could catch on fire. all these things could actually happen. People could get sick. Like, who knows what could happen? So to me, the biggest risk is like the physicality of it makes it so fulfilling and so amazing to watch people actually eat your product, to hold it in their hands, to be able to say, I created this thing within, 4 months. But it's also, to me, the biggest risk and like the scariest thing that keeps me up at night is that all of this can go to waste. And that's where all of our equity is in this literal physical product.
And I heard you mention in the beginning that it's not just the body health, but the environmental health that you're concerned about. Is there anything that you're doing in terms of packaging your product and other processes that you're thinking about environmental?
Definitely where our cows are coming from, or where our milk is coming from, where the cows live and graze. So that's number one, is we're looking at, organic grass-fed milk. That's, of course, going to be a premium. And so it's something we're testing with customers is, do they care that it's grass-fed or not? We definitely care that it's organic, but is there another layer that people care about? That's for the environment. Another is the packaging. So we're in a very prototype packaging phase right now. What you'll see is not what the final is. But it was a huge debate. Do we do glass or do we do plastic? Because people are under the illusion that glass is often more environmental. When it comes to shipping costs, fuel associated, actually the process of making glass, it is actually way more environmentally taxing than a lot of the plastic that we're using. So we've chosen to go with plastic that has a paper wrapper on the outside. This is an important part that we need to message, but to make it recyclable, because it is recyclable, you have to take off the paper before you put it in the recycling. So we'll do something around that, make some sort of campaign. But those have been all like thoughtful and intentional decisions that we've made along the way, just to make sure that we do have the environment in mind as well.
I've always wondered about water consumption around product packaging.
Yeah.
Right? Because with glass, there's a lot more water that's used.
There is so much more.
And do you know anything about the difference in consumption of water?
I don't have any numbers that I could tell you, but I do know that it's a lot more with glass.
Yeah. My wife used to be a really big recycler. And then there was a lot of information that came out about it's all just getting dumped in the ocean or sent to China.
A lot of it is.
Yeah. And then the amount of water that's being used. And so now, unfortunately, a lot of stuff just goes in the trash. And I don't know how it is in New York City with the recycling, but
it's not much.
Yeah.
I can tell you it's better in California.
Yeah. Okay. What frustrates you the most about the way that the bigger brands operate, or we talked a little bit about the processes and some of the things they use as fillers, but like, what are some other frustrating things or things that just don't align with you that the big brands do?
It's a great question. Frustrates maybe isn't like I don't have an answer for that. I do have an answer for what I think they're doing wrong per se. And I think the thing that's really on our side is how much is the authenticity that we're able to show. Like, there's a discomfort that Alana and I often have with saying, damn, we just got a cease and desist. Or like, oh shit, this product tastes really bad. Or like, this went wrong. Because that's not what bigger brands are doing. Bigger brands are just showing you like the polished version at the very end of whatever R&D process they had, whatever brand building process they had. But actually, I think that this process has made me led to believe that like that actually doesn't build trust with the consumer. And what builds trust with the consumer is taking them through like the ups and the downs and the real failures throughout, because they can see and they can trust that actually now I actually really believe in this product. I believe in the people who are making this. I see the brand. I can trust where my food is coming from. And this process just really has highlighted that for me. Like as a consumer now, I'm a very different consumer when I think about buying from a big brand, a very opaque brand, versus one where I get to see the whole process and where it's coming from.
Opaque brand. Mm-hmm. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of opaque yogurts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how do you start to scale your community engagement as you grow? You're launching, we're looking into the future. How do you scale the in real life connection? How do you scale community as you grow?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I don't know. We're figuring it out. I think it's something where currently we've just sort of tackled the next thing as it's come. And we're sort of lucky that things have worked out. And I'm sure things could have worked out better, but we've just made it work, whatever direction it's taken us. And so I sort of see that as the next phase is how do we make this scalable? The biggest thing I think about is how do we tap into existing places where our customers are, where we don't need to build that audience. We can just tap into an existing audience, get our name out there. And if you think about like we're like a drop of blue or blue, if we're a drop of blue ink, like we get to go into another cup of water, drop our little bit of blue ink, and it spreads everywhere. and then to another cup of water and another cup of water. And I see that even here, right? Like I get to tap into your audience. I get to tap into these Damien's audience, Founders Commons audience, and I get to be here for 45 minutes and share my yogurt. And then I hope that you all enjoy it, receive the message, can tell that story to your friends, and it continues sort of bleeding on and expanding. That's my best answer. I have no idea.
Yeah. I mean, I think keep sharing the story too, right? Yeah.
Over and over. I'm like, you have to say it 10 times before somebody remembers that it is.
Yeah. And at what point are you just the talent that shows up and...
Fully, totally. I'm like, it's very... Sometimes you're just like a figurehead for something, and it can be very exhausting.
What have you taken from private equity into what you're doing now?
Two biggest things. One is, what are you building towards? I think being very clear about, are we building towards an exit? Are we building towards profitability? Are we building towards exiting towards a strategic, towards another fund, towards whatever it is, informs the decisions that we're making. In the beginning, not so much. Now it's really beginning to inform the decisions we're making, whether we fundraise, whether we buy a factory, or do we just use a co-manufacturer, those types of things. So that's number one. Number two is align stakeholders. This sounds like such like a corporate jargon-y thing to say. But I was sitting in a lot of rooms where I was advising CEOs and executive teams who were like 40 years my senior. And there were so many different parties. There was, the fund level, there's the executive teams, there's the board seats, there's all these different people, and you need to make sure they're all on board. And the secret is you can still have the answer and you can guide them all towards that answer. You just need to sort of whisper in all their ears and make sure they're brought along in the decision-making process. And then you can make sure they end up all on the same page. And I feel like that's how I treat every decision we make with our community and our followers is, maybe we already actually know the answer. It's just about bringing you along in the decision-making process so you can see how I got to that answer. So even if you would have made a different decision, you can empathize and understand where we were. So that's sort of the second soft skill corporate-y thing.
Yeah, stakeholder management is not my favorite thing to do.
No, it's exhausting.
It's exhausting, but yeah, in that environment, you have to do it.
Yeah.
And so now besides your customers and your audience, you are the board member. You are.
Oh, that's the most amazing thing. It's like, there's no back and forth, right? It's just me and Alon, and we just make the decision together, or I just make the decision and I tell her, and then we run from there. So there's not this annoying, loop that you're always stuck in. But I will say sometimes we make a decision and then I think, oh my God, we're going to make that decision and nobody else knows about that. And all of a sudden they're just going to see us at our co-manufacturer. And I spent all this time telling them about how we're going to decide to choose a factory. What are the different, factors and variables that we're choosing a factory on? And all of a sudden they're just going to see me there. That's very disjointed. I need to tell that story in between. And so sometimes we have to go back and actually think about what's the narrative that we are telling and how we made this decision. And so that's also always on my mind is how do I sort of spin that story? Spin is like a very negative thing. It's not manipulative at all. It's more just like, how do you fill in everybody to where you got?
Yeah, you have to think about what they might be interested in learning from you. Yeah, and
totally.
It can be very detailed or it can be broad. I think as I've started my social media journey, like seeing what people are interested in, really, like once you start sharing, you get feedback from people
all the time.
And so you can, you can see what people are interested in. Yeah. And then that helps me understand what I can be sharing with the audience, what they really like. The fact that I'm in New York right now, my audience has just been like,
loving it.
They absolutely love that I'm in New York for it. Everyone loves the city is why. Yeah. I mean, that's
true.
Everyone loves the city. Everyone loves the city. So that's a piece of their heart.
Yep.
So
it's true.
You mentioned that you are using one factory, right?
Yep.
And you said you might use or buy your own factory. Help me understand how
we won't. We're not going to buy our own factory, to be very clear.
Why not?
It's a good question because we need to raise like a ton of money to do that and actually go and do that. And look, Chobani did that. That's how they got their start. And now they're a huge company. They're a generational company. They're now acquisitive. I think for us, that's not the long-term goal, at least not for right now. We want to do what's best for this company to actually be successful. And right now, like our main focus needs to be on growing it, not necessarily on going and raising $20 million to go and buy a factory. It's about like getting the customer base, growing it, be up and running, and maybe talk to me in like 2 years from now. But for right now, that's not the best decision.
I think you just made a really important point that anyone that's building a company can learn from. Keep your main thing the main thing. So yes, it might feel like going and buying the factory because Chobani did it and because you might need to at some point in the future, but that's not necessarily your main thing. And it can become a huge distraction from doing your main thing. Anything can happen in that time that you're focused on buying a factory, especially with a small team, instead of focusing on the main thing, especially when you're so engaged with your audience.
Yeah, that's a really good point too.
Yeah, it feels related to go figure out this bottleneck that you might have. But in reality, it's a huge distraction, especially in an early stage. If you can narrow down the 20%, the 5% of the things that you need to do, and I'm just...
No, it's right.
If you can narrow down to like, what's the 5% of work that me as the founder, that me as the co-founder, that me as the content creator can do to achieve 95% of the results, that's when you can be super, super successful. But it's hard to identify.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you're so right. It's like totally the ruthless prioritization, another corporate jargony word that I'm just saying, but that is true. Is like there's so many distracting things. I even think about it with like fundraising calls. We're introduced to so many funds every day, which is fantastic that we have, inbound on wanting to have these networking conversations, but it's so distracting when actually we have saved enough and put enough aside to get to our first real production run. And so like what you said, it's like, okay, let's just keep the eye on the prize. If we can get there, then we can sort of, continue on and continue on. We don't actually need to do all these other things.
So what are you building for? You mentioned exit, raise, like from your PE world, and now your decisions are being influenced by, or your decisions now matter more as you're building towards something. So what are you building towards?
We want to keep our options open. I know that's a non-answer, but it is in the sense of we don't have as many strategic buyers as David's Protein Bar or Olipop or Poppy or whatever it might be, because dairy and cold chain, there's fewer buyers. So, General Mills is shutting down all their yogurt. Like all of these big companies that you usually acquire are not actually looking in the yogurt aisle. You have Lactilus, which is a big yogurt brand. They own Siggy's, Stonyfield, a lot of those big Brown Cow, a lot of big yogurt. Danone, which has like Oikos, Dannon, Danimals, you name it. And there's a few other players in the yogurt space. But again, we need to build for optionality because we don't have necessarily that like guaranteed exit that a lot of these other like CPG shelf stable brands have. So again, we're keeping our options open, which means we just need to build like a really solid business that can be profitable and that then we can either decide to keep and own as like, a scaled business, or that we do have the option one day to exit to one of these.
So are you focused on cash flow then, on profitability?
We
okay.
are. Yeah.
Which is a shift from the last 10 years, really.
Totally. It is. And you see that a little bit as a shift generally. There's just like slightly less money being thrown out around in the venture world towards some of these CPG companies. And yeah. So. Yeah.
And you mentioned David protein bars. I just discovered those recently. Love them. And then I don't know if you know the recent news. They're going to court, but they bought the factory that produces the binder. So then they're going to cut everybody out of the market of being able to produce a similar products.
Yeah, which is wild. And, I don't know how Alon and I were like not thinking about this, but we got on the phone with the founders the other day, literally 2 days ago, with David's Protein Bar, and we're, asking them all these questions. And like midway through the call, we realized, stuff is so different for them because the founder started RX, right? So like they got like a leg up. It's like, oh yeah, I started YoPlay. Now here I am starting a new company. Of course it's going to be, we can get to 100 million revenue in the first year. Like there's definitely going to just be a leg up, which he absolutely should take advantage of. And it's a very different situation.
What else did you find on that conversation? With David's Protein Bars, yeah.
They gave away a ton of free product in the first week that they launched. And they hit 1 million in revenue in that first week, which is insane. But giving away free product was a huge flywheel for them because people never get free product. And it wasn't influencers that they were giving free product to. It was people who'd been on their wait list who were normal people like you or me. And we're not used to getting sent free things. And so by getting sent something free, of course they're going to talk about it. Of course they're going to tell all their friends about it. They won't shut up about it. They're going to post on their stories about it. And it created this instant moment of virality and this sort of boost right in their first week of launch that was so critical to actually get them the growth that they wanted to see.
Are you planning on something similar?
Maybe something similar. Now we're like, oh yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah, it is. Because word of mouth is still like one of the best ways.
So it's the best route.
Yeah.
It's like organic. That's what you need is organic virality.
Yeah, organic virality.
If I can have the moms talking about us to other moms at pickup and drop off, then we're set. Like that's golden.
Yeah, you're on the next door app.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Yeah, that's what you want.
Right, that's what you want.
You've won when you
Totally.
when you can do that.
Totally.
So how do you avoid burnout with everything that you're doing?
I don't know. I think that it's Alana and I are like hitting that right now. We're early. It's been 6 months, but the past like 3 weeks in particular, we joke these are our investment banking days. Like we're, up till 1 a.m., up at 6 a.m. again, and physically demanding, like physically biking, trucking, loading shit everywhere. And it's really, really, really fun. But also it's stressful. And so it's one of those things where work doesn't feel like work, but it also is stress. We have like low grade anxiety, but then also we're having so much fun while doing it. It's really hard to acknowledge that it's, one way or another. I don't know how we avoid burnout. Like we're just sort of in it, and ask me again in like 6 months and maybe I'll have an answer, or maybe I'll still just be really in it. I don't know.
Yeah. They say for people that are deciding what they want to do, go find what feels like play to you, but looks like work to others. And then that's like your zone of genius. That's your flow state, and go hard, go all in as much as you can.
Oh yeah. I mean, I have friends who say, I can't believe you do this. I can't believe you talk to so many strangers every day, because every pickup drop off, every customer I meet, I talk to them. I want to engage and like genuinely authentically want to engage with you because I want to learn about you and what your yoga habits are, and why you like this or why you don't or whatever it is. But also I'm 99% an extrovert, like on any test that I ever take. And so to me, I'm like, this is just fun. Like this is just energizing and fun and plays to my strengths in a way that I think can be very draining for other people too.
One of the things that I heard from one of my mentors that resonated early on was that becoming an entrepreneur is actually the greatest self-improvement project you could ever go through. Do you feel like you become a different person, better person?
Better? Yes. Like you're constantly having to find your edge. You're constantly learning, like, where are my weaknesses? How do I address them? How do I get better at them? But I do feel like there's a double-edged sword where I feel like there's like a self-absorption that can come with that too, which I don't love. Like I don't feel like I am self-absorbed, but my work is me. And so I am absorbed in that bubble of sour milk, of my social media, of myself, of how do I get better at this, of how do I do, and that is my world. I don't have this like broader work community where I'm working towards this like other person's vision and this other team goal. And so I think that's like the other side of the founder thing that I don't know. I'm still sitting with.
I was going to ask, so how do you balance that?
I feel like I've become like a worse socializer with friends. It's like, I don't have anything to talk about other than like my work. But I tried, now that I'm conscious of it, I feel like the first few months I was less conscious of it, and now I'm aware of it. I don't know. I just try to like be much more curious about, be more overcompensate, be more curious about other people's stuff, what they're doing. Obviously, I listen to a bunch of podcasts, not in my space. Like, try not to always be in the same space of health, probiotics, founders, all those things. Get out of that. And make time for like other people and other things. That's the biggest thing. That's the hardest part. But
yeah. Create space for yourself. Create space for the people that matter.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah.
All right, Kiki, thank you so much. And then we are going to go over to the audience now for some Q&A.
I have a question kind of related to what you guys were just talking about on burnout. So how do you, Kiki, juggle being the face of social media and doing literally everything else? I mean, you can work hard, but at a certain point, you need to be planning effectively and like wearing a lot of hats. So what tools do you use, or are you trying to figure that out at this point, like in order to stay on top of everything you need to?
Totally. That's such a good question. For sure, use so many tools with social media. That's been like the biggest game changer. When I was first learning how to do social media, it was just like a day-by-day knife fight. I was just trying to figure out how to make a 45-second reel every single day. Now I actually plan my content the week before, and I have content pillars, and I sort of think through, this is the day I'm going to film a day in my life. This is the day that I'm going to do, I call it Alon makes fun of me, but I call it a talking head video, and it's just like your head to the screen, like a talking head. This day I'm going to do a talking head video on this type of topic. This is when I'm going to do these types of stories. And then I'm not consumed by it. I used to be consumed by it. I have to be taking footage at every, point just in case. There's no just in case now. It's set and it's planned. And so that's very, very helpful and very important. And then I think I'd go crazy without a co-founder, honestly. I think having a co-founder has been the best part of this journey. Is she's my best friend. People say don't go into business with your best friend. I think like she's the only best friend I would go into business with. And it's proven to be very, very the right choice. And I think we balance each other out and keep each other sane in that mental check of, am I prioritizing these things right? Am I spending too much time on this? So it's the tool of actually planning out your content. And I mean, we do the same for how we think about our roadmap as well. And then secondarily, having that gut check person to keep you accountable.
Something that's worked for me is planning my days around my energy. So if I know that I can do really deep focused work in the mornings, which is true, it's harder for me to do deep focused work in the afternoons or at night. So I schedule a lot of things around my energy, and it takes a while to get there and to learn. But if you know yourself, and if you know Monday mornings is better for something and Friday afternoons is better for other things, then literally schedule that stuff on your calendar and do the best that you can to adhere to that amongst all the hundreds and thousands of things that you have going on.
Kiki, if you were going to create another product within the product line down the road, what do you see it being?
I get a lot of requests for drinkable yogurt, like in a pouch for on the go. So there's something that's interesting there. People are already doing it, but I think why not try that? So that's one. I would love to just be up and down the dairy aisle. Like I would love to do a really yummy cultured butter. I would love to do, actually do like just milk too. I think that could be really fun to have like a sour milk would be kind of cool and funky. And then, yeah, the drinkable yogurts, I'd say.
Let me ask a question. So let's say you want to go down the road with like a sour milk.
Yeah, totally.
How do you reach Midwesterners and say this is going to be good?
I actually think it's the only way to do it. Maybe that's a hot take, but what do I have over a Chobani? What do I have over a Siggy's? I have literally nothing. All they know is that it's yogurt, that it's in the yogurt aisle. It's a plain yogurt. And to them, what's the difference between this probiotic or not probiotic? To make them take a second look on the yogurt aisle at this weird name called sour milk. That's literally all that I have is that brand and those 2 seconds that I get right there. And so making people pause for 2 seconds is like our biggest asset right now to get somebody in the Midwest, because otherwise we would just fade into the background. And maybe we'll turn people off, but actually maybe we'll turn some people on, which then creates, hopefully, some virality, organic virality through word of mouth through that.
Yeah. Malk, I think, did that really well.
They did.
First time I saw Malk, I was like, oh, that's weird. And then I had it and I was like, oh, this is the best almond milk I've ever had. Yeah.
Totally.
You're super passionate about what you do. It like illuminates. So I'm really curious how you navigate disagreements on your team, even with your co-founder.
Yeah, that's a great question. By the way, my team is just me and my co-founder. So the disagreements are the two of us. Actually, the only disagreement we ever had was over choosing the new name. And we have talked a lot about how do we navigate disagreements. And I think we've been lucky to this point where if we're given the same set of information, and that has to be the necessary truth, right? We have to both be given the same set of information. We often will come to the same conclusion because we have no ego about this. We're in this for the business because we're both very passionate about this. I think where it differs is for us on the name, we had like a different set of truths because I'd actually been on the front lines marketing, and she had wanted to go with a safer name, and sour milk to us was like the unsafe name. And I was like, well, for the past 6 months, I have interacted directly with customers every single day and seen what resonated and what doesn't. And actually the most uncomfortable things are the things that resonate and get the most attention. And yes, like likes and views is not necessarily the same as buys, but in this economy, it kind of is turning into the same sort of thing. And so we're now operating with different knowledge. And on this one, hey, I think I have more expertise. And that comes from no place of like, hey, I'm better than you on this. It's truly just like, where are we coming from? And so we had that very honest conversation. And it was like, yes, okay, great. And so that's sort of the framework that we've always built around this is like, what knowledge are we coming to the table with? What's the delta between us two? And are you maybe have higher ground here? If so, okay, I trust you enough to actually go with this.
So you wrestled for it and you won.
We wrestled and I won.
Yeah. It creates a roles and responsibilities conversation though, especially as you scale and maybe bring on other team members like.
Totally.
Or because I do a lot of work or used to work a lot with my wife, and when we got better at working together was when we got clearer on who's responsible for what decision making.
Totally. I mean, like she knows everything about product. She was a product marketer. She was a product manager in her previous life at like a Web3 API company. So not yogurt, not physical product, but she was a computer science major at Stanford, is totally an engineer and totally takes the yogurt project like an engineer and has completely engineered the entire recipe, figured everything out to the super, super small, fine details that I'm like totally lost on. And so that's really her area of expertise as well, is being very clear on that.
I have a question that kind of ties into that technical background. So if you're a founder and you don't have a technical background in building the product that you're trying to build towards, like co-manufacturing, how did you go about picking the right co-manufacturer? Like, how did you navigate that process? What kind of questions did you ask? What were the qualities that you were looking for?
I mean, we also obviously had no idea before we started. So first, we made sure we were super prepared going into any of those conversations. So we talked to a lot of other CPG founders who had worked with co-manufacturers before. So what are and people who had churned, like who had a bad relationship when and moved to a new one, like what were the things that you wish you knew before? And so we got really a better understanding from that. The biggest things that we were looking for was the partnership. So are these people we actually want to work with? Because we're going to be there and we need to trust them with our product. And even if something goes haywire on the processing line, do we know that like the end product they will vouch for and that we can trust will be in good shape, right? So that was number one, is who are the people that we're working with? Will they be willing to meet us where we are right now? We're tiny, right? We're doing 250 gallons of yogurt and we don't even, of 250 gallons of milk, and we don't even know like our schedule, right? Are we going to be once a month? Are we going to be once a week? We don't know. They have to be willing to meet us where we are. And a lot of these big factories are not willing to take on a little guy, or they're going to really strong arm you and they're going to make you pay insane prices to be there because you're a nuisance to them. So we needed to make sure that they would do that. And then the third was, will they be able to scale with us? So there was a lot of small places that we were talking to that they were willing to take us on because they were small and we would actually be a big source of revenue for them, but they were not going to be the partner for us in 1 year. And ideally we could hit all those three, where they could meet us where we are now and we could scale and we could be at a place where 2 years from now, we're doing, 5 pallets every 3 days and they're still the right partner for us. So those are the biggest things. And then you'd also just have to like vibe check it. Yeah.
Hey, Kiki. So I think a lot of us in this room are founders in some way or trying to be founders. And I'm really curious from your perspective, if you were to redo this all over again, what would be one of the best decisions that you guys made for your company? And what would be one of the less smarter decisions that you guys made so far?
Less smart decisions is not investing in a lawyer at really important times. So hence getting the cease and desist. That was a situation that was unfortunate. We filed 24 hours after the other Benny filed. So if we had a lawyer, they probably would have caught it. There's also still a huge chance that they wouldn't have caught it because it was literally 24 hours. But we were sort of under the mindset of someone had given us advice. You guys can just file your trademark without a lawyer. It's actually pretty easy. You just have to pay the $350 to the USPTO. And we did that and we did our own search, but we were not thorough in that search. And so pay for legal help when you really need it. And now we are lawyered up and we paid for legal counsel for our new name and also for our co-man contracts, like any contract that we're writing, signing, all those sorts of things. Social media is the biggest thing I would do over and over and over again. It's like, it's crazy and it's very uncomfortable for me personally. Like your question about being the face of it. I mean, I have my own weird, like moral, ethical, I don't know what it is about like playing into the attention economy and being this like, vapid influencer face of things. And so that's uncomfortable for me personally, but for the business, it's like been the best thing that we could have ever done. The fact that we sold out of 1,500 yogurts in 7 days, where we had the most high friction buying experience where people had to literally come to us in a random part of New York City to pick up their yogurt. that's incredible. And we only had that because we actually built a following.
I'm curious to hear more about your sources of learning, especially as an early founder. I think, and I just hearing from other founders as well, there's a lot of different places where you can get information. So I'm curious where you found the most useful, like golden nuggets of information. Is it like Googling how to make yogurt, which a lot of founders do. Their answer is like, I just Google it and I figure it out. Is it Chat GPT and YouTube? Is it finding a mentor in the space? Is it calling other co-founders like you did with, David Barr? Like, what has been the most helpful for you? And maybe that has changed as you've kind of gone through different phases, but I'm curious to hear about that.
I mean, definitely Chat GPT is like the most helpful for us just on business stuff, right? Like, how do I get my like New York vendor's license? Like just stuff like that you don't even know you need to know. It used to be like so many founder chats because we just needed to understand like the lay of the land. Now it's specific founders that are in very adjacent or specific like fields. So there's 2 founders that we call all the time. One is a frozen cottage cheese company, Froco. They're called Smear Case. Joe is awesome and he's in dairy. And so that's incredibly helpful. And it's not cold chain, it's refrigerated, but it's like similar. And so that's been really helpful. Another is Eli. She has a company called Bezzy. It's a lavender company here. And again, it is dairy, it is refrigerated cold chain, and she is absolutely not doing any shipping. And that has been like learning and hearing about her retail strategy and how she's going about this. We could talk to David's Protein Bar, we could talk to Poppy, we could talk to all the most successful companies. They don't have the same path to market as we do. And so talking to people who have the same path to market, the same types of challenges with their products, now that's the helpful thing. And we'll probably, like David's, we took the call because like it's David's Protein Bar right now and they're like the hottest thing. But we're not really doing founder chats other than people who are really in our niches.
How did you get time with these founders?
I think people want to help. So when I started putting myself out there and said, hey, this is what we're doing, like I wasn't asking for help, but folks sort of like flooded in and offered it. Being in front of people, we met a lot of these people at events and we just went up to them and said, hey, like, I'm Kiki, we're starting a yogurt company. We know nothing about this. Can you, would you have time to get coffee? We're in the same adjacent industries of dairy, blah, blah, blah. You're cornering them. You're asking them for a direct ask. They're going to say yes, right? So like being very direct with your ask is very important. And then like adding value immediately. So a lot of these, when we ask for a coffee chat, we often will propose like, hey, for example, Bezzy, she'll say this herself. She's not good at social media. So initially it was like, hey, I have some tips for you on how to do better at social media. Here are the things you need to talk about. Let's get on a call and actually discuss this. And so I can provide immediate value to her. And then it's worth her time as well.
Yeah. And this is, I'm guessing, all through social media, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So that's the thing that I've learned with social media. If you're a founder or you're starting something, the world can feel big and scary. As soon as you start posting on social media, it actually starts to feel a little bit smaller because you're going to find the other people that are doing the thing that you're doing. They find you and you can get help. And I think your strategy of adding value and in whatever way that you can and not being a burden is a huge strategy. And so social media creates a smaller world and then it also expands your world and it makes everything feel a little bit easier actually when you have all these resources behind you. And then honestly, there's this story from entrepreneurs about like, oh, everyone hated me. They said it was too risky. They all doubted me. That's not been my experience on social media. Like there's people that are out there, I'm sure, staying silent. I've had mostly cheerleaders and people that are like, go, 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 go. And it's been very helpful being on social media for that.
I totally agree. I think the one thing that you will find with the CPG is like, in order to hit just $1 million in revenue, I have to sell so many yogurts to get there. And so you'll definitely get doubters from like a business perspective. So for example, when I was at my private equity firm, it was like, is this really the business that you really want to go into? Fair. That's a very fair comment. But otherwise, like no one's doubt. Everyone's trying to be your cheerleader.
That's
for
right.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you definitely get the doubters and people just don't understand or they've walked the walk. But that's part of the journey is you have to do it your way and your way will either be extremely successful, or you're going to learn a bunch and you're going to apply that to the next venture.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I find it very inspirational how you build your marketing as you're building your product, and like especially seeing how when you post on social media, how people get invested in your product, and that it's only available like in real life at specific like pop-ups. And like one of the reasons I came because I really wanted to try the yogurt, and it was
It's going to be here. Yes.
Yeah, perfect. So I was wondering, after you launch, do you plan to change your like marketing strategy and do like other things other than like in-person events like expos and like social media, or like this, because these things work, you plan to just like keep going heavy on them?
I don't know yet, but I think we'll probably keep doing what's working. I think what you said was so on point, which is like your superpower, your zone of genius is what's fun and what's almost easy for you and play for you and hard for other people. And we found that to be the case about the social media and the events and just like the in-person touch points and interactions. And so we definitely want to keep those things going. I'm sure we'll expand to like, more UGC or influencer marketing or like all those types of things. But to us, that feels like a little more inauthentic and also just like we don't know about that yet. We're not there yet. And so I don't know.
So as you kind of step into this creator CEO role, how do you think about, or what's your opinion on the delineation or not of your personal brand versus Sour Milk's brand as you continue to scale and grow?
Thought a lot about that because I'm building from my personal account versus Sour Milk's account. And to me, they feel distinct. And I sort of see my Instagram and TikTok as Couchwoman because my last name is Couchman. And Couchwoman.
It's a great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It is good. I've like held on to it since like freshman year of high school and I'm never letting go, I see that as like really, at least for Sour Milk right now, like top of funnel. It's an area where I can capture people who are interested in what it's like to be like a 26-year-old living in the West Village in Manhattan who's quitting their job, who is disgruntled with their finance job and wants to do something else and maybe didn't even think they were interested in yogurt and now are super invested and super interested in yogurt, and now they'll check out Sour Milk. And so that's currently how I'm using it. Definitely it will evolve, and it's given me much more latitude to run with things that I wouldn't be able to do on Sour Milk's account. So brand building with Sour Milk looks really different than brand building with Couchwoman. I get to try Chobani and tell you it tastes really bad and there's a lot of shitty things in it as Couchwoman. As Sour Milk, like I don't know if I want to stand for that as that type of brand. As Couchwoman, I also get to talk about like, this sucks. I feel burnt out. I'm like kind of recovering from a cold right now, if you can't hear. And I had 4 events this weekend and we did 150 drop-offs. I'm really tired. From Sour Milk's account, like that's not going to be the same exact narrative. And so I don't know like if there will be a next venture or what that looks like. But right now, Couchwoman gets to be a much more authentic sort of space for me as CEO and co-founder of a yogurt company, not me as Kiki. And that's a sort of separate conversation too, where I've had to be very like distinct with that boundary as well. I used to post a lot about myself personally, and now it's just sort of like LinkedInified, if that makes sense.
Yeah, as a follow-up, I was actually going to ask, how do you think about the authenticity of your personal brand now?
I think authenticity doesn't need to be like wholly consuming. Like you can be authentic, but still only show 25% of who you are. So it's not that it's not that it's inauthentic because it's not showing 100% of me. You don't know who my sister is all the time, where my family is, that I grew up on I didn't grow up on a dairy farm, that my dad grew up on a dairy farm, like that I'm half Chinese, like all of these things, they don't need to necessarily be on Couchwoman to still be an authentic version of part of who I am. And so I just think about like me in this co-founder seat. What are my authentic opinions about this thing? How am I authentically feeling about this thing? And those need to be captured through Couchwoman. Not all my identity needs to be captured through Couchwoman.
I think about Alex Hormozi when this question comes up, because it comes up a lot. Should I do my personal account? Should I do my business account? Or how do I do that? And I think about Alex Hormozi. How many businesses does Alex have? Do we know? He probably has 10.
Right, a lot.
A lot.
Yeah.
Do you follow acquisition.com or do you follow Alex?
Right.
Who are you buying from? You're buying from Alex just because he has other products and businesses that you end up actually buying from just because it's a piece of paper that was filed to the state. I know that Sour Milk is more than that, but
no, totally.
Ultimately, and your personal brand will go with you wherever you go. Yeah. Whether it's Sour Milk or something else or anything else.
And I think like that's to me, it's like, oh, it's not necessarily about that. But I do think people really do follow people and not brands. Like people follow Elon Musk and they know who that is. And they know what Tesla is, but like they know who Musk is, right? Or like Donald Trump versus the Republican Party, or like these like crazy figures. I'm not trying to be those types of people, but there's definitely something about the power of the person and the personal brand versus the actual institution or like company or bigger organization behind it.
How long did it take you to get over the cringe of just like seeing yourself online? And what are like the practical steps you took to actually like get engagement in the first month of posting? Because obviously it's a huge part of your brand. And I was a very early follower, and yeah, I very much admire that part of it.
It's so cringy. I still really struggle with that for what it's worth. Like the feeling of, pointing at someone's video and you're like laughing at it because they get like 20 likes. And I know that I'm that person for like a lot of people, but you just have to get over it. I made a commitment to post every single day for 3 months. So 90 days, 1 video a day. You just got to do it, Kiki. I don't care. And I started on TikTok because TikTok felt more anonymous than Instagram, because I like co-opted my personal Instagram account to do this. So I started on TikTok. I started a month before, and that gave me the confidence to then just go and do it on Instagram. And everyone told me, hey, your customers on Instagram, they're not on TikTok. They're going to be a higher price point buyer. They're going to be a little older. Like you got to get on Instagram. So, but that was number one, do it every single day. What that forced, I was not allowed to tell myself I'm bad at this until I did that for 3 months, because I did not have enough data to tell myself I was bad at it. So until I posted 90 videos, like you're just someone who's posting 20 videos, like you're not good or bad. You have no idea, whether you are or not. And so 90 videos gave me a benchmark to actually look at what was working, what was not. And then from there, and that was like January 1, from there, I was able to really hone in on this is what's working and this is not. So that was like the first big tranche, was like, just get through that. And you just can't judge yourself, and you just have to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what works. And then from there, it was about crafting the video. So through that process, I started following a lot of people who do a lot of content creation type stuff, and really learned about visual hooks, learned about verbal hooks, learned about storytelling, learned about, creating a villain in the story and how do you get over that and overcome it? How do you make someone actually convert to a follower? Those types of things. But you'll learn those things as you go. I think the biggest thing is actually just sort of the exposure therapy, honestly.
A smaller first step, if that feels too big.
Sorry, was that a really big?
That was that's how all the content creators, that's the advice that they give.
Yeah.
You just basically gave sort of a little bit of a masterclass in how to start.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm so glad.
But a smaller first step is through Instagram stories, because stories go away in 24 hours. If you can post 3 stories a day, maybe 1 of you actually looking at the camera and talking to it, and try to get better every single day, it goes away in 24 hours, but your existing followers will tell you what they like and what they don't like. You'll see some engagement and you just start to get better. The next step could be going live every week.
Oh my gosh, I've never been live.
You should.
No, that's so scary.
Once a week, go live.
Who you talk about?
You just talk about what you're doing. You show you're at a pickup, and then maybe you could do some Q&A like this.
Oh my gosh.
You should try going live. Yeah, you should try going live.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
See, that seems scary to me.
Yeah. But that's the thing. It's all reps. Yeah.
The one other thing that I'll add to that is through those 90 days that I had exposure therapy for myself, I was able to figure out a style. I wouldn't have been able to figure out a style if I just did 1 a week, because I would have endless time. I would have 7 days to work on 1 video, and I could make it amazing and perfect and all these things. When you're forced to make a video in 24 hours, I mean, honestly, like 3 hours, because I was working during that time, you have to figure out what's authentic to you, what comes easy, what comes natural, what resonates with you personally, because you're not going to be able to keep this up if it is really hard and takes a very long time. Because my job is not video editor. My job is co-founder and, building a company. And so I was forced to figure out the thing that fit into my life as part of it.
What's the point of what you're trying to say? Tell a little story and then reiterate the point.
Always, how are you bringing value to the person who's watching?
Yeah.
It's the biggest thing. Be very ruthless about that. Is like, how is this valuable? There'll be times when I make something I'm like, scrap, it's not valuable. Actually, I'm just saying something I want to say. Nobody wants to hear this. So
how do you decide what's valuable? And and a follow up, because like you're telling a story, right? And it's kind of your journey about how you're doing it. So who is the audience that you're trying to create value for? Do you have someone specific in mind, like a ICP, like an avatar that you're talking to, or is it just, I think this might be valuable?
There's two types of value. One I think about is reach. So like what's something that's going to be sort of like mass valuable, I guess, and mass create an emotion. To me, that's the biggest thing is when I want to get more reach, I want to create an emotion. And then there's the niche value of like, how do I serve my existing customer base? And my existing customer base is here because they're invested in this yogurt journey. And so what's the thing that's on my mind about like decision making or how I'm going through this? So those are usually like the two vectors I think about it through is like serving base versus getting more reach.
Yeah, I have a question. So it's interesting story about the yogurt in the world in New York City. Yeah, just like wondering, how did you figure out the product market fit? Did you start talking to your friends and family, or you actually went to the yogurt or you went like to the stores like Chobani and say, you know what, I have a secret formula for you, but the yogurt, but their life.
We conducted about 150 customer interviews before we ever even decided to quit our jobs or leave or anything like that. So I'd say like we started with the customers first. We talked to none of which were our friends, but we talked to our friends. Hey, do you know someone who's a big yogurt eater in your life? Hey, do you know someone? Yeah, Damien is a huge yogurt eater. One of my friends' fiancés eats the 32-ounce like tub of yogurt. He pours a whole thing of blueberries into the yogurt and just eats that for breakfast every morning. Insane. That's so much yogurt.
It's a lot.
It's a lot of yogurt. But we started talking to those people and we had a set list of 15 interview questions that we asked them. And we ran through that. And our goal was to do 15 interviews a day. This was like about a year ago now, each of us. And then we really got to understand, okay, what's the white space? Does this have resonance or not? Then Alon had sort of like a MVP recipe that she made on a stovetop kitchen, not fully legal to sell, but we sold. And we saw, okay, would people buy this? Like, are people actually buying this? Would our friends and family buy this? That's the biggest thing is like, don't just give product away. Like, will people buy? Because you want to know, is there a willingness to pay? And that's like really actually product market fit. And then we just sort of kept iterating and going on that. But we had enough conviction through those conversations and also through like enough early purchases to understand that there are people here that would continue to buy.
How do you deal with criticism and how do you decide when to take action on it versus kind of stay true to what you're doing? Because I think you have an aspect of like you're online, you have a lot of people looking at what you're doing and have like a really easy ability to comment on that and give their own view. But then you're also building an edible product where people have very personal preferences. So you can get feedback for both of those kind of like avenues. And how do you decide like, oh, you know, someone's not liking the taste of this yogurt, you know, do I do something about it? Or someone's giving me feedback on this aspect on my kind of marketing or video style. Like, do I take action on that or no? That's just a personal preference. You know, it's also a space where both online and, you know, for food choices, people have very, very personal preferences. So like, how do you decide when to listen to that?
Well, I think you just said it. It's like so many people have just very personalized and specific weird styles and habits and choices. And I think that's why there are so many CPG brands, like so many food brands, so many consumer brands, is because there's always more of the market to cut out for yourself because people will resonate with your product. So I don't know that there's a direct formula for actually choosing what we listen to or what we don't, but it's pretty clear when they're an outlier, I would say. And I think that's the biggest thing is if you're getting, you know, a little bit of negative feedback, but 80% is positive and that 80% is in line with our vision and where we're going, we're not going to over-rotate towards those 20%. But, you know, we had a very real conversation with like moms the other day. Moms is a target audience we really want to go after that we haven't tapped into. Is this packaging and is this branding and is this vibe resonating with you all? And we had some like good feedback that came from that. That's a small percentage of our customer base right now, but it's one we want to grow into. And so that's one that we listen to because we actually want to go after that. And that's sort of an aspirational part of the market that we want to go to. So it has to be in line with where you want to take the company. And then you have to sort of sift through the feedback layering on that.
All right, Kiki, final question before we dig into the yogurt and we sell you out of your first batch. This is a pretty special moment, by the way. This is your first ever batch, and we get the last 50 containers here. So last question, what is the thing that you're most proud of to date?
This is so like smushy, but my relationship with my co-founder. I am so proud that Alon and I have stayed such close best friends through all of this. We have a 4.5 hour drive to Ithaca on Wednesday and then back on Friday. And I'm so excited for that drive because we just get to hang out, talk to each other. We get to weave in and out of sour milk and business topics back to our personal lives and everything that's going on. And I was nervous that we wouldn't be able to maintain the level of intimacy and just closeness that we have with each other as best friends. And we really have, and we've strengthened it, and we've been able to challenge each other in ways that I didn't know someone would challenge me in that type of way other than, you know, my partner. And so that has been, I think, the most proud thing. Well,
it's clear that you're extremely passionate and you're going to be super successful. Like I can just feel it. I think everyone here can feel it too. So I thank you so much. Follow you at Couchwoman.
Yes.
Is that the best place? Any other places you want people to go to come check you out?
At Couchwoman on TikTok and Instagram, at Get Sour Milk on TikTok and Instagram as well. And then we also post a lot on LinkedIn. You can add us on LinkedIn.
Great. And I'm Kassidy Warren. You can follow me at Kassidy.Warren on Instagram. And as always, I appreciate all of you. I love all of you. And this has been For Your Own Good. Peace.